So let's talk about another measurement, temperature. So temperature, right? We've heard the temperature before all our lives. Ooh, it's hot. Ooh, it's cold. We think about that as temperature, but temperature is actually the measure of molecular motion. Okay, so depending on how fast molecules are moving, that's actually impacting the temperature. Okay, so there's three temperature scales we're going to talk about here. We have Fahrenheit, that's America. Go ahead, be different. Celsius, all right, this is the metric system. And then we have Kelvin. Okay, so this is that SI unit I was talking about earlier. All right, so Kelvin is the SI unit for temperature. Now, Kelvin, all right, this is something that we need to know and understand. Kelvin does not have negative numbers. Okay, so it's only going to go as low as 0. There are no negative numbers for Kelvin. But let's talk about this scale here. Okay, so now I want to compare the different scales to each other. Fahrenheit, we know this, right? If we're thinking about water, let's just think about water. Water freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit and it boils at 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so when we think about this, right, we have to consider basically our degree. Think of it in our degree, our degrees. Okay, so Fahrenheit has a difference of 180 Fahrenheit degrees on this scale here. Okay. Now this is going to be impactful as far as when we go to convert different things. Okay. So if we look at Celsius, water freezes at 0 degrees Celsius and it boils at 100 degrees Celsius. Okay, so we can see, right, with this comparison, there's 100 degrees Celsius here between 0 and 100. Now let's compare that, right, to Kelvin. So Kelvin is the new unit that probably a lot of you guys are not familiar with. This is the SI unit of temperature. Okay, so we're going to be using Kelvin a lot this semester. So Kelvin, water freezes at 273 Kelvin. And it boils at 373 Kelvin. So what do we notice here with these differences? Okay, it's 100-degree difference, right? 100-degree and Kelvin difference. 100 Kelvin's different. Okay, and is that the same scale, right? Same degree as Celsius? Yes. Okay, so because of this, we're going to see that it's actually it's super simple to convert from Kelvin to Celsius. Unlike our friend Fahrenheit. Okay, and that's due to that 180 degree difference here. Okay, so it's 100, 180. Okay, and also we're going to see a difference with our absolute zero. So absolute zero is basically the lowest temp possible. Okay, and this is basically where molecules are going to stop moving. Okay, so this is the reason why we call it absolute zero. And as I mentioned before, that degree is very impactful. Okay, so like I mentioned here, Kelvin will not have negative numbers. So because of this, this is absolute zero for Kelvin. 0 Kelvin. Can't go any lower than that. However, right, notice, right, because of the way that our degrees are set up, 0 for Celsius is here. So we can have a negative number for Celsius and Fahrenheit. And we can see, right, when we're at 0 Kelvin, we're at negative 273 Celsius. Okay, and if we compare that to Fahrenheit even more, we're at negative 459 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so this is going to be very important as far as this is the why as far as when we talk about converting our temperature units. Okay, so you want to understand the why as far as why it will be easier to convert Celsius to Kelvin compared to when we convert Kelvin to Fahrenheit. It's all about that degree difference here. Okay, now speaking of temperature conversions, let's talk about it. All right, so like I mentioned before, the size of the degree between Celsius and Kelvin are the same, right? 100. They're the same. So because of this, it's a lot simple. It's super simple, matter of fact, to convert Kelvin to Celsius. So if we look here, if I want to find my Kelvin, okay, my temperature of my Kelvin, I have to do my Celsius plus 273.15. This will help me convert to my Kelvin. For Celsius temperatures, right? We see this. For Celsius temperatures, if I want to find Celsius, I must subtract Kelvin by 273.15. Okay, and this is going to give me my Celsius. Okay, so basically you're either going to add 273 or subtract 273. That's it. Simple as that. Okay, so specifically, you think about it with Kelvin, you're going to add 273, big numbers, right? Big K. Celsius, you're going to subtract 273. Now, so that they have different sizes of degrees, and we understand, right, that they're off by 32 degrees Fahrenheit at freezing point. Okay, and then we know it's a difference here. So because of this difference in scales, right, it's a little bit more complicated when we're going from Fahrenheit to Celsius, okay? And basically, Fahrenheit degrees are only a 5 out of 9 as big as Celsius degrees, okay? So because of this, these are our conversions, okay? So these are the same conversions. This one you're probably more familiar with. They use the 9/5 times by Celsius plus 32 gives you Fahrenheit. You can use that one. That's perfectly fine. I just like to use a decimal just because it's not dealing with fractions or anything like that. So if I want to find Fahrenheit, right, and I got my Celsius, I'm going to multiply 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. And that's going to give me my Fahrenheit. And that will give me my Fahrenheit. Now notice I've only given the Fahrenheit equation. If I want to go backwards, we got to do some algebra here, okay? And we have to solve for our C here. Converting, right, temperature scales. That's what we're looking at. So we're going to convert 75 degrees Celsius to first Kelvin, okay? And then I want to convert it to Fahrenheit. So let's look at this. I'm in 75 degrees Celsius. What do we have to do here? Pause me right now. Okay, so if you pause me and you try the problem, hopefully you try the problem, but let's do this problem together. Okay, so 75 degrees Celsius. This is what we're going to do for the very first one. I'm going to see here, right? Got to use my good old conversion. So if I'm trying to go to Kelvin, I'm using this one. Celsius plus 273.15. Simple as that, right? Because they got that same scale. So I already have my Celsius. So all I have to do is add 273.15. So 75 plus 273.15 equals 348.15 Kelvin. Okay. So this is what I have in Kelvin right now. Now, I also need to figure out, well, what's the Fahrenheit for part B? So 75 degrees Celsius, that's what we have here. We just converted to Kelvin. What can we do here, Dr. J? So we got to do some rearrangement. Okay, so far, right, I gave you the other way, okay, as far as if you're solving for Fahrenheit. This is the way if you solve for Celsius. So definitely take a screenshot of this or just have it memorized in your head. Or if you don't really care, you could just do some algebra. You can do it that way too. Okay. But this, if you're solving for Celsius, Okay, it must be Fahrenheit minus 32 over 1.8. Once again, I just wanted to show you this so you can know how it looks. Now, let's talk about how we actually are going to get from Celsius to Fahrenheit. So, right, doing some algebra here, okay, what we're going to do here is, and then this should be reviewed, but if not, let's just go over it. We're going to cross multiply. So you cross and multiply to get your 1.8 times your Celsius. This is what we see on this side, all right? And when you cross multiply here, remember, this is going to say the same. So now I got Fahrenheit minus 32 on this side. We're still not done though, because we got to solve for F. Like I said, it's algebra. We just getting started with this algebra stuff. Okay, so how do we solve for F, Dr. J? Okay, remember, if you want to get something by itself, right? If you do something to one side, you got to do it to the other. So I know I don't want the 32 on this side. What am I going to do? I'm going to add 32. So if I add 32, right? Remember, whatever you do to this side, you must do it to the other side. So this 32 will be canceled out, but I also will add 32 on this end. And when that happens, my Fahrenheit will be solved by itself. So my final, right, Fahrenheit equation is Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. This is what I showed to you guys the other way. I just wanted to make sure that we understand how we can go from Celsius to Fahrenheit. Okay, if you wasn't sure about the algebra. Okay, so now that we have Fahrenheit solved, what can we do now? Let's just plug in everything. So Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. Right, I got 75 degrees Celsius. So I'm going to do 1.8 times 75 degrees Celsius plus 32. Once I do my math here, put in my calculator, I'm going to see that for Fahrenheit, 75 degrees Celsius in Fahrenheit is 167 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay. And this is how we're going to be converting right between our temperature scales. We're using only really only a couple of equations here, right? And let me just point them all out so you can know. We got the Fahrenheit one. Fahrenheit equals 1.8 times Celsius plus 32. We got the Celsius one that's already solved for you. So definitely, if you don't want to do no algebra, just remember this. Fahrenheit minus 32 over 1.8. And then we have our Kelvin to Celsius. So you're either, if you want Kelvin, you're going to add 273, or if you want Celsius, you're going to subtract 273. Okay, that's it. Those are your four main ones that you're going to be using. Okay.